There you go.
Welcome back to the Fire You Carry. We have Nole. You're looking like you're not a sports guy, but you got this blue and orange Rogue shirt on, looking jacked. But that's like the Florida Gator colors, dude. What do we got going here?
I don't even know what team or what type of sport that is, but I mean, Florida's cool. I've been there before. I know some Florida men. I will tell you this, my friend who loves football, soccer,
both types of football.
Well, we call it soccer here, but I've been watching some of the World Cup games because
there's no way I was gonna really highly encourage you to watch this.
Yeah, so I'm at the station a lot right now, and the guys are watching the World Cup. It's on all the time. I'm amazed at how many games there are. It's pretty insane from my perspective as a non-sports guy and someone who's never paid attention before. I could not understand how there are so many games and so many teams, but apparently it's the sport of the world, I guess. Everyone plays. So I just have to tell you, I have been enjoying watching, and the guys are probably annoyed because I have many questions. There's a lot of things that I don't understand. Offsides being one of them. I just confused out of my mind watching these goals, and then the ref's like, that's not a good goal. And I'm like, what happened? And they're like, well, his toe is past this. Anyway, you understand what I'm talking about. Yeah, anyway. So I went in to watch the USA versus Bosnia game with the boys, and I got about 5 minutes in, and I fell asleep.
No.
And when I woke up, the game was over. But I really appreciated the John Denver song at the end and the whole crowd singing along. It's pretty cool. So I've been watching. I have watched other games where I actually saw the soccer game, but anyway, I just want to let you know. I thought you'd be proud of me.
Listen to it. I'm super proud of you, by the way. This is like you're one of 6 billion people watching this, which is
that's a big deal, right? It's a cultural thing. Yeah.
It does bring people together, which I think is great. And there's these epic videos online of these foreigners finding out that people actually do drive giant trucks in Walmarts bigger than their country.
Yeah.
And that Americans will refill your cup of coffee endlessly, and they just think that's the greatest thing. Apparently you have to pay for water in Europe. That's a thing. And so they just lose their mind when they get a cup of water. And there's this one English guy, and he goes, it seems like the entire wait staff, all their purpose in life is to refill the water for you.
What a strange thing to get excited about, but I love it.
But the U.S. this is the best they've ever done, and I get super patriotic. We've always been the underdogs. We've never won this thing. This is the farthest we've gotten. So it's really fun to watch.
Awesome.
I'm glad you're watching, bro.
Yeah. Have to.
We were talking last time about we'll see.
Yeah, dude. So we were going down that road of communication and how important that is with the kids and with the spouse. And of course, the next thing that comes up then is communication and, the rest of our world as men and for us as firemen. And I thought, my initial thought was we need to do one of these from the perspective of a captain in the station, leadership perspective. Right. And then I immediately also thought, well, I'm not a captain in the station. Kevin's not a captain. Like, do we have a place to speak into this role? And I think that we do. And I think it's actually a really good place to speak into the role because we can talk about it from the perspective of, as firemen, I feel like I can say long-term firemen. We've been doing this for a long time. You have a pretty acute perspective on what we are looking for from a leader. And so rather than coming at this and saying, leaders, this is what you should be doing, because we're obviously not in that role officially, although it can be argued that there's leadership from the ground up, but that's a different topic. But we can come at this from the role of, this is what I'm looking for. This is what helps me out as a fireman. I'm the guy on the bottom of the rung. I'm the lowest ranking guy in any fire station I walk into, and on any scene I'm on, I'm the worker. I'm the neck downer. So yeah, dude, I thought we'd talk about just a couple of points, and
I like it.
Let's get after it, dude.
Our friend Dave Tebow does probably like a master class on leadership, and he's given that to us at the program multiple times, and I think it's I'm gonna just fillet his thing, but I know like he talks about some of the highest form of leadership comes from your character,
Mm-hmm.
and I do think that's true. When you have a high character guy that you can respect on duty and off duty, that does what he says, you know what I mean? He's consistent across the board, right? And then you have a feeling that he's there for you and he's sacrificed things on his own behalf to his own detriment for the guys, then it's an automatic yes for me. Like, I will follow you. And because I can tell that you're a high character guy. And we have those guys that I work with right now. And I think that you can just tell, like, hey, you lead by example, you're a high character guy, you're doing the right things and you're taking care of the guys. That to me is that's the automatic. Not just because you promoted in. We've all had a new promotee in and they
Right.
start barking orders. I'm like, you haven't earned that yet, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, that's a great point, and it's something that I actually wrote down at the bottom of my notes in different language. But there is I think most guys realize this, and we're just. I think today I'm going to primarily be talking about the captain's role because that's the leadership role that has the most direct effect on me as a fireman, and I think a lot about myself. So that's what I want to talk about. Uh, but this principle, this idea that, like you're saying, you have to be a man of character, and it can't just be in the firehouse. Like, it's got to be across the board. But there's this idea, this reality, I think, that when you take on the role of a captain, leadership in the fire service, it's a huge responsibility. There's a lot of weight there. And I feel like it's important for guys to know that and accept that up front. Unfortunately, in my time in the fire service, I have seen guys who promote, and it's for other reasons.
For a paycheck.
It's for a bigger paycheck, or it's literally for the bugles on their collars because they like to tell people they're a captain. Like, it's for different reasons. But I think what you have to realize, if you're going to be a good and effective captain, a good leader that guys want to work for, you have to recognize that A, you volunteered to do this, right? Nobody forced you to do it. And so you volunteered to take on this added burden and to really say, I'm up to the task of leading other men, which is a really big deal, especially in fire service, law enforcement, the military, where while it does not happen often or all the time, your life, Kevin, my life, could be on the line based on the decisions that you make as a captain. And it's easy to forget or to kind of compartmentalize that and go, well, that's not really happening today. Today we're just helping elderly people back into bed and taking blood pressures. But the reality is it could happen at any moment. So it's a burden that you're voluntarily taking on. And I personally don't think that you should step into that role and take that burden on unless you're willing to step into that role of actually leading men. You should not be pursuing that role for a paycheck, for future promotion, for clout, for anything. I don't think that it's appropriate, especially in this line of work where literally right now we could have an 8-point earthquake in LA County and we might be doing stuff that is incredibly dangerous to our life and health. And your decisions as the captain are going to really dictate how that turns out.
Yeah, so there's a trust factor there, right? And trust comes from, I think, experience, right? That, hey, there's a body of work that I can trust this guy, you know, and that's why I say, like, when I've had captains that have come in hot, they just got promoted, and they said they're going to change everything, and this is what we're doing, and the large nature of our fire department is I might have never heard of you or have no idea who you are, anyways, and it would be hard for me to trust or follow that until you've proven, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the flip side is true too. I've heard things about a Dave Tebow or whoever it may be, right? And I'm like, I'll follow him blindly because his reputation precedes it. I know he's as competent and high character dude that you can possibly get. I have no problem following you without ever having to work with you before, you know?
Yeah. Which means you have to have been building that reputation and that experience over time while you were a fireman, while you're a paramedic, while you're an engineer. And from the flip side of that perspective, as a captain, you need to know who your players are. So there's a time and a place as a captain where you got a brand new probationary fireman. He's just out of high school. He doesn't know anything. He's been on the floor for a month. You have to work with that guy and help that guy. And you essentially are going to need to micromanage him a little bit, and not only say, hey, I want you to cut a hole over on the BC corner, but you're going to have to walk him through it and give him specific direction. You walk into a station where you've got two firemen on the truck who have been on both over 10 years, that no longer becomes a necessity. And in fact, it becomes detrimental to micromanage those guys because now they feel like you don't trust them to do their job. They may actually know a better way to do it than what you're micromanaging them to do, or it might be outside of their normal realms of training or whatever. So in those type of contexts, an effective captain says to his guys, hey guys, I need you to cut a hole over there in the BC corner, and, heads up, there's a dead load over there and there's power lines over here, go to work, and trust his guys to do that. Now, obviously you have to know your players and know that they're capable of that. And if they're not capable of that, you have to get them up to that point so that you tell them what needs to be done and not necessarily how to do it. There's nothing more degrading as a man, especially if you feel competent in your role, than having somebody come in, especially if they don't have the reputation and the experience and the rapport with you, like what you're talking about, and have them say, I need you to do that. I need you to park right here, or don't throw the ladder right there, throw it over there. Like the tiny little intricacies of the job that don't necessarily need to be, but that a lot of captains feel like it needs to be done exactly my way. That just puts me as a fireman in a position of, my captain doesn't trust me. He doesn't think I know how to do my job, which affects how I then go on to do my job, for sure, in a negative way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that management starts at the beginning of the day, right? So I really respect Nessa for he likes to start his day lineup at 8 o'clock, like sharp. That's what the manual says, but it also sets the tone for the day, right?
Yeah.
It sets the tone for the day where if like, hey, you have a 1 hour window from when you relieve the guy in the morning at 7 a.m. We relieve at 7. I know City relieves at 6:30. Other people relieve later, but it sets the day where like you show up on time, you check your equipment out, and then you be ready at 8 o'clock to figure out what's going on for the day. And I really like that because I think the captain can create a culture, right? To say, hey, we're going to start our day knowing that we have no idea what the rest of the day holds. There could be move ups, there could be a brush fire, there could be an earthquake, there could be all kinds of stuff that goes haywire, but he's going to get the information across. He's going to get a pulse of the guys, and then we're going to determine our day. And I really love the culture that like we've developed, and it's partly there's some feedback and buy-in from us, but a lot of the guys are program guys, so we literally have a quick lineup. We go around the table, see what we need to do. He says we're going to drill at whatever 10:30, 11 o'clock, and we're going to work, breathe, pray, work out, train, and then the day is yours. And for me, it's like that's the best day ever because the rhythm of the fire station works well when we have a time frame to say, oh, we're going to get a workout in, we're going to go do the housework before we go to this train. So there's not this looming hanging thing over our head or it's a surprise. And I do think the captain has a big part in setting that culture or that rhythm of the fire station so that I can expect it. And now I expect what's going to happen. And it's bizarre if we don't do those things.
Yeah. Setting the tone for the day in the morning at morning lineup is a huge deal from a leadership perspective, and taking it that extra step too, where you lay out the schedule for the day, but then I love it, especially if I'm working with an overtime captain or somebody I don't know. I love it when, in addition to that, they also let me know the things that they personally care about. So whether that is, hey guys, I want to make sure that when we're dealing with patients today, we give the best patient care that we can, and we are super kind and respectful to everybody, regardless of who they are. Or, I don't like hoodies on scene. You guys need to be in a uniform shirt, or bare minimum a shorty jacket. Like little stuff like that is so valuable to me, especially when I'm working with a guy where I don't know what his personal preferences are as the captain. The worst thing is not knowing those things, going on a call, having my short sleeve jacket on, and then finding out that that captain is against short sleeve jackets and he wants you in the uniform and he tells you after the fact. Well, I wouldn't have failed that, you know, requirement that my captain for the day has if he'd told me up front. You tell me up front what you expect, and then I can meet that expectation. But if you don't let me know and then I find out afterward, now I'm just on my back foot. I just feel like I've failed, but it's a requirement that I didn't know existed. So
Yeah.
in addition to laying out the schedule for the day and your vision for the day, if the interruptions don't happen, I think it's really important to also set the tone of the day for the guys. And my favorite captains always talk about safety, getting the boys home safe, how we treat the public, those type of things, which a lot of times maybe feel like they shouldn't need to be reminders that need to be said. But if we don't say those things, then the guys sitting around the table maybe aren't thinking about those things, or maybe they're, we fall into this mode at work where it's just repetition, the same thing over and over again. And sometimes those things that are so obvious, we just kind of forget and we don't necessarily execute on them. So I love it when the captain sets the tone for the day. And there's nothing worse than working for a captain who acts one, you highlighted this a little bit earlier, but who is one way one day and a different way the next day. You got to be even keeled. You can't come in and be angry and yell at the guys one day and then the next shift come in and try to be their buddies. And like, you've got to be even keeled. And if you're the hard charger guy that's rough around the edges and is just going to be barking orders and being that guy, you got to be that guy all the time. I don't think that's the best leadership style, but trying to flop back and forth just puts me in a position where I never know what I'm going to get. I never know what to expect, which makes it really difficult for me to execute in a way that fits in with the captain's leadership intent and fits in with what the rest of the crew needs to accomplish.
Yeah, it's just my opinion, but I think that's the burden of leadership for a captain or somebody in charge, is that no matter what they had going on the day before, that they're the ones setting the tone, right? So,
right.
And consistency is key. Consistency across the board. I think always the great Kevin Tobia, I'm sure he had things going on at home. I'm sure he had stresses in his life and whatever. But when he came to work, you know what I mean? He was so consistent across the board that you absolutely knew what to expect at all times. And that, if you know what I mean? And so that consistency created a culture, right, that we could expect and we can count on. And that he would obviously take the temperature of the room, and he saw, and we do that now. I think even Rick Cook said when we had, he's a captain, he was like, hey, I'll look at the guys in the morning at the lineup. If they're all beat up or they're on day 4 and that's probably not a day to go do the hardest training that we can possibly do, And so I think that the burden of a captain or a leadership is that no matter what's going on in your life, you have to stay consistent. And we all have bad days. Some of them would come in hungover or whatever it may be, but I think you're going to have to splash some water on your face. You're going to have to figure it out real quick and then create that consistency across the board to be effective.
Yeah. And it's not that we're saying we don't care what's going on in your life as a captain, because obviously if you got struggles going on at home, like, we want to know about that. We want to talk about it, but we also need you to be a stable presence and to be a leader, because tactically, like we talked about before, we could be going out into a war zone, right? Something may be happening and we need to know that you're solid. Doesn't mean you have to be a perfect person to totally dial all the time, but that consistency is super important. And from my perspective as a fireman, if I'm working with you as a captain and you come in and you're super hungover from the day before and you hold a brief lineup and you immediately climb into your bed to sleep off that hangover, I'm writing you off for the rest of the day. And I'm assuming that if we get an incident, I'm on my own. It's me and my engineer, and you're a non-entity. You're a non-factor. As a leader, as a captain, that shouldn't be what you want your crew to believe about you, which means that, again, back to the burden of leadership, maybe you don't execute your life that way. Maybe you got to start making some adjustments because you're now in a role where it's super important. And it can be argued that goes across all ranks, right? That applies to me as much as it does to the engineer or the captain, which is true, because where I'm at right now, we're a 3-man house. So I'm the only fireman. The engineer's the only engineer. The captain's the only captain. So nobody should be living that way. It's not unique to captains, but you do put yourself at a higher level, I think, of responsibility by stepping into that role.
No doubt. I've long felt that if you just did your job, like do your job at whatever rank, like if everyone just did their job, like everything goes smoothly. So you go on a call, let's say it's a medical call, the engineer gets on the rig promptly, finds the address correctly, and parks in a safe manner. The firemen jump off, start an assessment, see what's going on. The captain actually grabs the EPCR and will supervise and get the temperature of what's going on inside and make sure it's safe, or start writing or getting information. And then the medics come in and we start doing the secondary level of assessing and seeing if we need to treat. If you just did your job like across the board, like, as the captain coming in, you put them on duty, you pay the guys. Engineer coming on duty, you take care of the rig, you check out the thing. The firemen come in, we're the house cleaners, right? Like if you just did your job, like everything runs smoothly. And I
Yep.
feel like
Yep.
whenever somebody doesn't do the basic job of whatever that task is, it's like, well, then that's where there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm totally guilty of it, right? I'm totally guilty. I'll come in tired, or I'm like, I had a tough night. I'm like, I don't want to do anything.
Right.
And well, that I'm failing. Like I should know as a fireman, I should have the lion's share of the task and whatever's going on. So that like you need to figure out how to put perfume on a pig and do your basic job.
Yeah, for sure. Communication is huge from the captain. And we've talked about this before, but I do want to just highlight it again briefly. When you're talking on the radio, especially when you're giving a size up at a fire, you need to sound cool and confident, and you need to be clear and concise. If you sound spun up and stressed, if you're breathing super hard, it raises the temperature level for everybody coming into that fire, and it changes the whole tone of the rest of the scene because everybody gets amped up and stressed. Not everybody. Some guys don't get affected by that stuff, but across the board, you got new firemen coming in, they're here and that. You got new captains coming in, you got your chief coming in. You got to be cool, calm, and collected on the radio. And then in addition to that, you have to communicate with your guys, and you have to do it in a clear way. So if you're on scene of something, not a fire, something else, say it's a flooding in a house, you can't just say, all right, guys, let's go to work. You have to tell them what you think you want to accomplish. Hey, we're going to try to get the water out of this room. We're going to push it into that room. Like you've got to give clear instructions. It can't be something vague and innocuous, because if you tell Kevin and I, hey, we're going to go to work, we're both going to think that means something totally different based on our previous experience. So you've got to be clear, and you got to communicate up front what you want to be accomplished. It doesn't necessarily need to be, like I mentioned before, how you want that thing accomplished, step by step by step, because if you got good dudes, they know how to do that. They're going to figure it out. But if you want the water out of the living room and you want all the furniture out of there, then that's all you got to say. I want the water out of here and I want the furniture out. And then let your guys go to work. But if you just come in and go, hey guys, let's see what we can do. Well, I might go around and start doing something that's completely outside of what you think is necessary for the call as the captain. So you got to be clear and concise, and you got to give those instructions up front. And secondary, or maybe, secondarily to that, it's really awesome when a captain is aware of who his players are enough to pull the room and to go, hey, Kevin, you spent like 8 or 9 years on a truck. What do you think about this? Maybe you've got some good input. Maybe you've got some good experience. Maybe you don't. But giving that opportunity for your crew, knowing their experience, knowing that they've seen things maybe that you haven't, or maybe they just have a different idea, that's super valuable. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we do it Kevin's way, right? If I'm the captain and I say to Kevin, hey, Kev, have you ever seen this before? You got any ideas? You did a lot of time on the truck. And Kevin goes, yeah, I would do it this way. This is what I've seen. And as the captain, I don't like it. You don't have to do it, but at least you pulled your guys and you talked to them. It's really difficult to be in a situation where you've seen something, you have experience in something, you know how to do it based on what's been done before in your own personal experience. And the captain not only doesn't ask, but isn't interested when you try to help him out and go, hey, Cap, I've seen this before. No, we're doing it this way. Like that just puts you in the position of, all right, I'm just a cog in a wheel, right? I'm not actually part of the crew. I don't have any good, valuable input. And now we're doing it the wrong way. That's super frustrating. And I'll still do it, right? We'll still do that. We're still going to follow your orders and do what you say, as long as it's not dangerous or immoral. But it's not the best way to get things done on scene.
No, I think on the opposite side of that, we're blessed with that. We have a lot of veteran guys across the board in all ranks, and firemen, medics, and engineers, and it always goes around the room. It seems like everybody has a specialty in some certain thing. Like I know nothing about anything but auto X, and I have glaring weaknesses and everything else. But when it comes to auto extrication, they usually just ask my opinion or ask me to run the drill or even add me to the ticket, which I really value because like that's one way I know that I can help, and then there's other guys that have been on super busy engines for 10 years and they got a lot of fires on engine work. Well, in the same token, I have to be humble enough to know that I know nothing about that and or I don't have nearly as much experience. And I pick their brain on new stuff that comes out, like nozzle forward stuff or how we move this 2.5 better and or even just pumping. We have great engineers that are explaining to me how we can do this better. And we're blessed with those captains and those guys that they'll absolutely step up in those things. And it's a group collective, but we're usually relying on one guy who's kind of the quote unquote expert in this one area
Yeah.
to say, hey, this is what our SOPs are going to be. This is what we do. This is the best way. And I absolutely love that because I think it would be easier for a captain to have a brand new crew. Not easier, but it's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. I think it is challenging when you have some senior guys that have
Yeah.
been around a while that are probably going to question whether you're right or wrong.
Mm.
And I have this one example. There was a captain who was newly promoted. I think he was kind of on the radar. They're in a probationary period, and he invited like the whole battalion over for some drill, and it was a truck ops drill that he was not comfortable with.
Mm.
And instead of deferring to a wealth of people that were in the room that knew exactly what to do on this thing, he just tried to fumble his way through it with no incorrect information.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it went so bad.
Yeah.
It went so bad that even the chief, I don't think it worked well for him. So like I'm not a captain, but I have seen captains do this to say, like, if Nole is here, he's our fireman. He's not on a truck, but he has a wealth of experience with this auto extrication stuff. If we're running a drill, I will defer to Nole as my fireman who's going to lead this thing instead of fumbling my way through it. And there's a humility to that, right?
Right.
There has to be a humility to that to say, like, I don't know it all, but I have great guys. I'm going to empower them to share their knowledge, and I'm glad he's on my team.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I do think we're blessed with that because our captains will do that all the time because we have some real go-getters that are great in certain things. We have some USAR guys that are currently in Venezuela. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're really sharp on stuff. And so I've seen it time and time again that they will defer to it, that expert. And I think that's really wise to do. And I think that would be a harder thing to do also when we have like a lot of our guys have a lot of competency. The captains are really competent. They were great firemen. They're great engineers. I think one of the harder challenges is to watch them fumble through, make their mistakes, and not just literally take over.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think that would be a very hard thing to do.
Yeah. It takes so much humility to be able to do that. And that humility is important across all ranks. When I first kind of came off the truck where I'd been for a decade and got into a battalion where I'm on an engine now, and I'm in a battalion where I have a really low seniority number compared to all the other firemen, I ended up on some drills where I was sidelined because I had so much time on and they were trying to give time training to the new guys. There's a bunch of other firemen on probation. And there was a point where one of the captains running the drill took me off my rig to put a probationary guy on there to run that part of the drill, and then told me, hey, you can shadow these guys and give them help and instruction on how to deploy a 2.5 and how to stay, how to handle a 2.5, how to anchor it and all all this stuff. And I had to tell the captain, hey, I haven't been on a hose line on a fire in over 10 years because I've been on a truck.
You're on the roof.
Yeah, I've been on the roof. So I appreciate you recognizing that I've been on the job for a while. That's great. But I actually don't know anything about this. I would actually learn from these guys. So I'm really not the guy. And the flip side of that is I could easily go, oh yeah, Cap, I got it. Yeah, I've been on blah, 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 however long. But the reality is I'm not that guy. So it takes humility at all ranks to really be able to do that.
Yeah, you're right. Because no matter how much time you're on, it's whether you're competent or not, if you've trained, if you have the experience, and if you worked on these things, And
Right.
reality is I'm like a specialist in one thing and lame at everything else. And so
100%. Me too.
I absolutely like love to do when we do the training. I like to volunteer. I don't feel bad about looking stupid. You know what I mean? Because I will look stupid because this is something that I don't do normally, right?
Right.
And that's the only way. And I hope that like I retain some of that so that when the time comes, I can like recall it and like, oh, we just did this, you know?
Right. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit. Last thing, well, at least last point that I have for today is the dynamic of praising your guys that are working for you in public and then correcting them in private. So just this perspective that as a captain, the guys know that you have their back, that you're not going to throw them under the bus. And you may be on scene of a giant fire. You're my captain. I do something dumb. You can address that at the AAR at the end of the fire in front of everybody. You can put me on blast because I did the wrong thing. I made your crew or you look bad, whatever. But by doing that, now I know that as a captain, you don't have my back. That if something goes wrong, you're going to shift blame, whether it was my fault or not, to me and the crew. And that puts me in a position where I'm going to be less comfortable to take bold, decisive action on scene because I know that there's not going to be any backing and support if something goes wrong for my captain. If the alternative is you do anything that you do in public is going to be praised, like, hey, you guys did a great job, but then privately you pull me aside or pull the crew aside back at the station and go, hey guys, this part didn't go very well. Let's talk about it. How can we practice this? How can we train about it? That's going to put me in a position where I know my captain has my back. So when I'm in a dynamic situation on scene and I have to make a decision, I'm going to feel confident that I can make that decision, knowing that even if it goes wrong, my captain will be there to support me and not be there to throw people under me under the bus so that he looks good in front of the chief or the rest of the group of people.
Yeah, it's no, I think it's almost a biblical principle, right? Like so it's like you know, it's God who's done all this stuff. I give him the credit. All glory to God, right? If something right goes wrong, and we have egos, right? You want to do that. Like you want to take credit for your success. You know what I mean? And I think that would be easy for a captain to do. Say, oh, yeah, I did this. I got my guys to do that. I got to do this. No, but I think there's that old concept. It's praise in public, criticize in private. And I think those are some of the best captains in the world that won't destroy you publicly, but then will privately coach and say, how do we get better? This is what we can do to improve. That's going to go so much farther than try to throw the dude under the bus in front of an AAR, in front of all the people. That's going to go so much better. And then I think there will be a mutual respect, and that respect will gain trust. And then you'll trust that your captain's got your back and he's going to do it. And then hopefully most of these guys are in type A, and if somebody wants to criticize me in private, I will take that personally and say, I got to get better. I got to strengthen my
fix
weakness.
it. Yeah.
There's a rarity that'd be like, F that guy. I'm not doing that. He doesn't know what he's talking about. That happens, but it's rare, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But I do think that that's a principle that I like try to work on too. Is, let's say, like, all glory to God. It's not me, it's our team. And I think that transfers over to the fire service to say, we did this, not I, like, we did this. And the credit goes, and I've seen great captains do that and say, hey, I did nothing on this. I was just holding the clipboard. The guys did all the work.
Right.
And those are little data boys. Those are little things that mean a lot to the worker bees.
Yeah, 100%. That's the guy you want to work for, not the guy who's trying to grease the skids to get himself into the next rank or get himself in the chief's good graces or whatever. Like, that's just, it's not fun to work for.
I've learned that in the private world. Like, I've done some stand-up comedy, and I did one set one time when I was just like doing a lot of wife jokes. Didn't go good at all. It didn't go good at all. It was not good at all. So, but she took it as publicly criticizing,
Right.
Just making, I was trying to make fun of like marriage as a whole, or like wifeism as a whole. But she took it very personally because it was actually her husband saying these things.
Right.
And in comedy, you're like, oh, the other day, there's like so much room for exaggeration and not truth. Right. I just wouldn't suggest that. If you guys have a budding career, maybe don't do a whole set with your wife when she's sitting in the front row.
That's a tough lesson. Hard lesson. Life
Bad
lessons learned the hard way.
leadership.
Right on, dude. Well, that's some really brief points. Obviously, we're just scratching the surface, and more of those were cautionary tales than like the right thing to do. But that's kind of it for me today, as far as the notes I had
throw
on.
this out there to you.
Throw it to me.
Dave poses a question: can you be an effective leader if you're obese?
In our line of work, not to your fullest extent.
I don't think so.
I don't really think that in the line of work that we're in law enforcement, in the military, I think it's very detrimental and steals a lot of the possible credibility that you may have.
There's a funny story. He knew nothing about this, but they was doing a captain's academy at our fire station because it's a huge training center. And we have one of the most respected and loved Captain Steve Miller, who had been at 147s for his whole career. He's just the dude's dude, one of the best truck captains. The chiefs asked him to come in and talk to them, and they assumed it would be about truck ops and leadership and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he he walked in and just said, obesity, this is your problem. You look at, you know, if your turnouts aren't even buckling, you can barely put your thing on. How could you lead men? And it just like shut down the room. And he said, like, even the chiefs were like looking at themselves and trying to, like, you know, flex their fat stomachs or whatever. But I think he has a point, you know, like, man, you can't lead anybody if you're not leading yourself. And I think it's a hard work, but the public expects people to look like you when they walk in. The public expects, and I think when it comes from the top down, that's just my personal opinion. I am a fitness guy. I do try to put work in on that, but I respect the person that is also making this because it shows discipline, it shows sacrifice, it shows, you know, a lot of things to me that I feel like if you're not doing that, it would be hard for me to follow you.
Yeah, for sure. I do agree with you, and it's a tough lesson, and that takes a lot of boldness to walk into a room like that and say that. But I think it is important, and as difficult as that may be to hear, even as difficult as that might be to hear us say, the reality is that I was on a drill yesterday with a captain who is at the tail end of his career. I'm not even going to say how old he is, but he's quite a bit older than you and me. He's going to retire like right now. And he is fit, he is strong, and he is a leader of men. He grabbed the hose line from the boot and was showing him how to operate it like they were supposed to have me do, and I didn't know how. And did it effectively on a hose line that was being pumped at far too high of a pressure. And when he turned that hose line on, he didn't move. And the boot fireman that he was showing was getting his ass kicked by this thing. Yeah. And this guy is respect. He's going to retire tomorrow, probably. Yeah. So it's possible those guys are around. There's actually quite a few of them on the job. So if you're in a position where you're thinking these guys are talking about me, screw these guys, just know that it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to submit and go, oh, well, I'm over 40 now and this is just what happens. It doesn't have to. You got to put in the work. It's hard, but it's more than possible. And if you look around, you'll find those guys that are doing it. Go ask them what they're doing. Follow their program. You don't have to rewrite. You don't have to write your own thing. You don't have to figure it out for yourself. Like, there's other guys doing it. It's possible to do. And if you're in that role, again, back to the burden of leadership, I think that's spot on, Kevin. I don't like it that you asked me that question and put me on the spot, but it's a good question and it's important.
My thought is you don't have to try to be the fireman. You don't have to be the best fireman.
Right.
If you're an older captain, you've had some injuries, I just want you to put in work to whatever works for you. If you do stretching, mobility work, yoga, and some bro pumps, you know what I mean? But you're staying lean, and that's appropriate for your position and your time on it and your age or whatever. That's totally appropriate. You don't have to be trying to beat somebody in high rocks or a CrossFit workout or something.
Right, right. You don't need to be doing heavy front squats so that you can pick up the lady off the bathroom floor. Because guess what? You're not picking up the lady off the bathroom floor.
But like
we're doing that.
If you came in hungover, obese, and you went right to bed after lineup and didn't do anything in the day, I just think you lose quite a bit of respect. If
Yeah.
you did something rather than anything, I think a lot of guys would be like, oh, that's just Cap does. He's been around a while. He's going to
Yeah.
stretch. Great.
I like it. Good lesson.
This has been the Fire You Carry podcast. Now I gotta
Same. Thank you guys for listening. Next Fire Up program class is in October, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. We are still working on a location for the 9/11 Memorial Stair Climb. We are very close, so we'll be announcing that soon, letting you know how you guys can get signed up, but just keep that in the forefront of your minds. We'd love to see you out there. And
I'll
see.
say this: if you're listening, you have some great guests. You have somebody that we'd love to interview. We have some friends that would shoot us an email, do a warm text with their buddy that has a great story. Hit us up. We love to talk to new people, and we'd love to highlight some of your friends who you think are rad, who are carrying the fire.
Yes, please send us those. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.